Hello guys, this is Dileep Nigam, CEO of SimpliExcel Training International and certified John Maxwell coach coming at you. And today I have the honor and privilege of having with me Mr. Doug Tennant, the Chief Executive Officer of UNITI, an umbrella organization responsible for caring for the support and quality of life of people with disabilities. So welcome Mr. Doug, really appreciate your time on this, and I'm sure your success story is really going to motivate and inspire many people in the near future. So Mr. Doug, before I get into the real interview, I would request you to talk a bit about yourself and a bit about the purpose and mission of this institution called UNITI.
Great, and thank you, Dileep, for coming out to visit us here at UNITI. First with UNITI. So UNITI is actually three organizations that work together to create an inclusive community that values all people. And what that means is there's three organizations. The first is Semi-Yamaha Society. Its mission is to support people to live good lives of their choosing in their community. Peninsula Estates Housing Society, it's our housing arm. It owns and operates affordable housing in South Surrey. And finally, the Semi-Yamaha Foundation, which is our foundation that raises funds for the work that we do and also does marketing and messaging for all of the organizations. Right. And as for myself, I'm sort of late to coming to this field on the operational side. So I've been the Executive Director of Semi-Yamaha Society and now the CEO of UNITI for the past 5 years. But before that, I spent 17 years in education, high school, working with kids in all areas from ESL to drama, and then ending off with educational technology. So just seeing a wide variety of things and innovations on the educational side of things.
Wow, so that was a huge transitional change from education to this institution of UNITI.
Yeah, absolutely. And the change was made easier because I was a member of the board and the board chair of the three organizations for 10 years until my term ran out. And at that point, I thought I was done with this organization other than volunteering and helping out. But a year later, the executive director at the time, Paul Wheeler, retired, and they came knocking at my door and asked me to apply for the position, which I did, and ended up winning the position, and here I am today.
Wow. And that's interesting, this institution which I was entering the organization here, I was so impressed. It really requires a heart to be in this business or in this job, and I'm sure that really was a calling you to,
Yeah, this work, but I would argue that any work is based on relationships.
Absolutely.
And I do think that not-for-profit organizations like ourselves actually have a lot to share with businesses and ways of improving the way that they go about the things that they do, because integrity, relationships, supporting all people to succeed, that's something that all businesses should be endeavoring to do.
I totally agree with that concept and message from you. Now, moving to the interview part of it, everyone, you would agree, is bestowed with a few strengths. And sometimes to grow in life, they have to work on a couple of areas of improvement or weaknesses. So if you have to recall from your perspective, what was your key strengths and what are the areas you had to work on to improve?
I think my strengths involve the ability to see the big picture and the ability to bring people together who are talented and passionate to work together as a team. The areas that I need to work on would include things such as the project management side of things, the steps that need to happen. And I have a really good team here who quite often will check me and say, that's a great vision, but have you thought of these things? And so, building a team that addresses the weaknesses in the way you do things is also excellent. And I was very fortunate that team actually already existed here, and my directors are fantastic at helping me. I can see the big picture, and so can they, but they're very supportive of helping me figure out the way to get to where I really want us to get to.
Wow, that's nice. That's a blessing that you have a team like that with you. Now, recalling your success journey so far, what has been the most memorable event of your success journey?
I would say that the most memorable event for this journey has been the physical incarnation of something that we worked on for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been our dream with UNITI and with the three organizations to build affordable and inclusive housing. And it was something that we didn't know a great deal about. Paul Wheeler, my predecessor, showed a lot of foresight in purchasing residential properties right close to this office, which eventually were turned into land that was redeveloped to create an apartment that features 71 homes, rental homes, of which 20 are for people with disabilities, and the other 51 are for the citizens of Surrey at affordable rates.
Okay.
And so that was completed a little over a year ago, and that ribbon cutting was a very important event for this organization, for the people that are living there, because it demonstrated that we were successful in completing a project that is good for the citizens of Surrey, but also really good for people with disabilities who now can live in their own homes.
Wow, I'm sure that was a very fulfilling moment of your life when this was, 55 and completed.
It was a moment to catch our breath. Definitely.
Absolutely, I can understand your feelings at that moment. Now, on the flip side, what have been the toughest moments of your career path, and how did you overcome that, and what were the lessons learned in those?
Things that I find the most difficult in this position is the times that I have to say no to things that I know will be really positive for people's lives.
Okay.
And I do find that very, very difficult. An example of that would be with the apartment that we built. We had over 140 people interested in living in the 20 units for people with disabilities. And at the end of the day, it was my job to say sorry and know it's not going to work for a group of people. And that motivates us here to create more housing so that we can address more of this need, the desperate need for housing for people with disabilities. But I do find that really difficult, and I think it's tragic that we have to say no to people that desperately need housing or desperately need supports.
Oh yeah. Okay, I can understand. Sometimes very challenging at that moment.
Yeah.
Right. As John Maxwell says, failing forward is all about learning from the failures and moving on in life. And failure is also a step forward in the journey to success. So if you recount your success journey, what was the most important failure of your life? And what did you learn from it going forward?
The failures that I've had in my life are many. You could probably write a book with all the things that have been tried and not succeeded. And just in general, I think it's very important to not fear failure, not fear mistakes, and that's a culture that we try to build here.
Right.
Again, coming back to, I think, which is a good example, is the apartment that we built. We failed. I failed to convince some people of what the project really was.
Okay.
So there are still people that believe that the project is about an institution where it's not seen as just an apartment like any other apartment that's out there. So the messaging that I need to get out, I need to figure out a way so that the whole community understands what it is that we mean by inclusion. And so that's something that I continue to try to figure out and develop. And so our outreach as an organization and personally is something that I do think a lot about. And interviews like this are an opportunity for me to again talk about what inclusion truly is and how it can create a society that is more fair and just for all. Right.
Okay. Now, what are the three key success mantras of your life?
So the first mantra that I aspire to live by is something that we would say: different roles, equal value. So everybody in the world has a different role, be it a janitor, prime minister, sports player, whatever else. So the roles are all different, but people's value as human beings are the same. And so it's really important that we value all people and listen to all people and hear their stories, because it's through that we'll be able to support them to live better lives. So that would be my first. The second would be, similar to this, would be treating everybody with respect.
Yes.
I find that by building relationships, by being respectful for people, even people who perhaps aren't being respectful towards you, by taking a restorative approach to relationships, you are able to succeed a lot more than trying to invite conflict. So that the idea that not to make assumptions about other people's motivations, to be open-minded and open-hearted, I do find that you then end up having relationships or forming relationships with people or groups of people that at some time in the future will serendipitously appear to help you achieve the mission, to get you to where you're trying to go.
Right.
So I think there's a third one now that I need to think of as well. So the third one would be to never give up either. So there's a lot of people out there that will say that that's not possible, and in particularly in our field, talking about the people that we support, there's a lot of prejudice and stereotyping that goes on about what people can and cannot achieve. And we come with the mindset that everybody needs to have an equal opportunity to achieve what everybody else has.
Right.
And that means that we work on supporting the rights of people with disabilities. I would like to get to a point where we are now talking a lot more about the responsibilities of people with disabilities. So we'll work on the right of someone with a disability to have a job, but once there's jobs there, and increasingly there are more employers that are being inclusive, inviting people with disabilities to work for their organizations, we then need to go to the people we support who have disabilities and say, there's a job available, you have a responsibility to take that job. So the rights and responsibility, I guess that would be the third mantra, is that we need to think about people's rights, but also then what are the responsibilities that go with those rights.
Wow, that was nice, very nice actually. Now, if you have to look back, who is one person who has helped you move ahead in the career big time, and in what way?
Right. So I would say the person that has been the most supportive and impactful would be Paul Wheeler, who was the previous executive director of the three organizations that we've talked about. I was on the board and the board chair and worked very closely with Paul, with the rest of the board, to get us to the place where we were able to build the apartment and just a variety of other things.
Right.
And he is a great man in many ways. One is that he believes in a philosophy called person-centered thinking, which is all about working with people to find out what it is that their dreams are for their life, tying that in with supporting them to make informed decisions about their lives. And what we found with this organization, with Paul bringing in person-centered thinking, it's really changed the way that we do things and made it much more about supporting people to achieve what their dreams are, much less about custodial support of people.
Right. Now, when we are managing a subject and a lot of different elements come in your life which require your attention. Now, prioritization and focus is very vital to accomplish results. Now, how do you decide what to say yes?
Right, and I probably do say yes to too many things. And I'm not sure if that's a common flaw, but I would say that in the community living sector, of which we are a part, saying yes is the initial reaction. And things get done when people say yes. And so I've said yes to some things that I've kind of shaken my head afterwards and wondered why I said yes to them. But at the same time, quite often the relationships that I've developed through those things have actually brought back real positive results for the organization. So an example of something that I said yes to was the local immigration partnership with Surrey. So I sit on the local immigration partnership. We don't specifically, we're not an immigrant organization. Now, we support people that are immigrants, but that's not our focus. But I knew that if I was to say yes to the local immigration partnership, it at some point would tie into the mission of this organization. And the partnerships that we're developing with other organizations that do support immigrants, I think will be a benefit to this organization, but more importantly, to people with disabilities who perhaps are immigrants, which is our main focus. So if I was to look back or look forward, I try to say yes to things that I know will support the mission of this organization.
Okay.
And it might not just be a real narrow saying yes, it might be a wide saying yes, because I can try to figure out ways that those relationships can then support this organization, the big picture.
Right, right. If you had to figure out what do you really struggle with, what would that be?
So I would again say that I struggle with sometimes the details of the big picture.
Okay.
And that again is where I'm fortunate to have a team that is really good at helping me sort of check myself and figure out the flow and the way that things need to fall in order to be successful.
Right. What is that which would surprise people and they don't know about you?
Oh, so my dream is to live off-grid in a small cottage and live off the land.
Okay.
So that's what I'd like to do at some point in the future is do that with my wife, and my kids can come visit if they want to.
Okay, cool. That's an interesting one. Who's the first person that comes to your mind when you define success?
So the first person that comes to mind when I define success would be a man called John Vanier, who I consider to be a great Canadian hero. He's a gentleman who traveled to France and was kind of searching for himself. And he ended up buying a house and inviting people with disabilities, developmental disabilities, to come live in the home. He saw how they lived in institutions, being abused, a horrible life where people were put in institutions, and thought there must be a better way. And he invited them into a home that he had bought. And gradually that grew into a movement across the world called LArche. And I would say that a lot of the things that we do now in terms of supporting people with disabilities were progressed by this man who selflessly created systems and an organization that has helped thousands of people with disabilities to live good lives.
Wow, that was a really good example. Wow. And then it's near your heart. What is that which you don't get asked too often, but would love to talk about?
So, like on the work side of things, I love talking about employment and the way that employment creates a better quality of life for people. So all the research that we do here and across British Columbia and the world, in fact, show that if you have a disability, if you're employed, your quality of life is much better. You have more relationships, you have more friends, you have much more, you have a network of support that is not paid to support you. So our big push right now at this organization is to support people to be employed in the community. And that's twofold. One is employers need to be open to hiring people with disabilities. And secondly, people with disabilities and our staff and their families have to be open to the idea of taking some risks and supporting a person to work in the community.
Right.
So that's one thing. The second thing I love to talk about, though, is sports too. So don't really want to talk about the Canucks right now. But a sport like rugby would be something that I'm really happy chatting about.
Wow. Wow. If you were to thank 3 people who impacted your life positively, who would they?
Well, my first would be my wife, Susie, who has been a fantastic supporter of me and, and the hours that I need to keep and everything that I need to do to ensure that this organization is running well. The second would be my stepdaughter, Krista. And Krista has Down syndrome. And in fact, she was the main reason why I ended up here. So I actually met her 23 years ago when she was 3 years old.
Right.
And that sort of shifted my path. At that time, I was working in hospitality, working in a bar. and meeting Krista and seeing how people with disabilities were not included in the community sort of created a passion in me that has led me to where I am today in working with people with disabilities and supporting people with disabilities to be fully included in the community. So she would be the second and three, and then the final one would be Paul Wheeler, the executive director.
That's a logical choice.
Yeah.
If you could have a dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
It'd be my wife, because I haven't had dinner with her as much as I would like to.
Okay.
And she's the best companion to have dinner with.
Wow.
She's a lot of fun, and it would be nice to have a dinner with no interruptions for 3 hours, have a nice bottle of wine.
So today you got to work out a schedule with her.
That's right, I've got to figure that out.
Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be a surprise for her too. Right?
That's right, yeah.
If you would be in a job other than this, what would that be?
The job that I would be doing, if it was not this one, I would be leading fine arts tours in Europe and taking people on writing art retreats with a wine tasting component throughout Europe. That's something that I used to do with students when I was a teacher, except for the wine tasting.
Okay.
And it would be something that I would really enjoy doing. I love to travel and I love to teach. So those are the two things that I would combine.
That's a nice one. Now, through your success journey, if you had to take out one lesson for the next generation, what would that be?
The most important thing, I think, to define success or to reach success, and my success is not my success. My success is based on the relationships that I've formed, the people that I know, the support that I get in trying to achieve what a lot of people are working for, which is a truly inclusive community. So the number one lesson I would say is surround yourself with good people who are smarter than you, who are stronger than you, who have more knowledge than you. And if you do that and you're not fearful of that, you're going to be successful.
That's so true. John Maxwell says, don't be the number one in the class.
Yes.
You got to be 2 or 3 so that you have somebody else to learn and listen from.
Absolutely.
That's very true. That's very true. I totally agree with that. Now, if you have to sum up, what's your dream? What would that be?
My dream is a world where everybody is valued and everybody is included.
Wow, that's such a profound statement. Very, 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 very enriching. How do you define success? I think you possibly have covered some time, but to sum up, how would you define success?
Success to me is having a positive impact on your community through the relationships that you've formed and the work that you've done.
Wow, that's very, very good. Incredible. That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Dr. Tennant. I appreciate your time. And I'm sure your story is going to motivate many, many people in the years to come. And thank you very much once again for your time. I appreciate it.
Great, and thank you for coming out.